Good evening, everyone. If you'd like to take your seats, welcome to the 17th edition of TransformGov Talks. I'm Gavin Freegard, Director of the State of the Future think tank. I'm one of the organisers, and it's wonderful to be here at Public Digital today and see so many of you here in the room and online as well. Hands up if you've been to TransformGov Talks before. Welcome back. Hands up if this is your first one. Welcome. You're going to have a wonderful evening, almost as wonderful as us Arsenal fans had on Tuesday night. Was that a boo there, I heard? Let's not talk about Tottenham. Anyway, for those of you who are new to TransformGov Talks, this is a space for people who care about making government work better. It's a nice straightforward format. Each event consists of 2 presentations and some questions and answers on how to do that, different perspectives, different projects, different thoughts on how we can make the public sector more effective. We are live streaming and on the record, so welcome to those of you online as well. And TransformGov Talks, although it's come from things like GovCamp, which are quite digital and data focused, we've got quite an AI focus for the event tonight. We've also covered lots of other topics through the series, so everything from public engagement to policy design to civil service reform, and even a history of the National Audit Office, which was surprisingly entertaining. You can find that on our website. I promise you won't regret it. For those of you in the room, there is one other very important thing to highlight tonight. That is, there will be free pizza afterwards. So how this is going to work, you're going to be treated to 2 brilliant presentations. I'll tell you more about our presenters shortly. They'll take about 25 to 30 minutes each. They'll present for a bit, and then we'll go into questions. If you're in the room, you can put your hand up, and I will run over to you with a tiny microphone. And if you're online or in the room, you can ask questions on Slido. That's slido.com, and the code is 2554962. I will put a QR code on the screen shortly for you as well. We'll finish at 7, and there'll be pizza and drinks here at PD, and then we will be heading to the pub afterwards as well, the Old Red Lion. So if you're watching us online, you can get down to Holborn for about 7:30. You can join us there as well. You can see that we've had quite a lot of previous events. You can find all of those at transformgov.org.uk. Going to have to start rationalising that slide soon to fit everyone in, which is a very nice problem to have. A particular thank you to Public Digital for hosting us tonight, laid out the bunting as well, which we're very pleased to see. PD are one of many wonderful sponsors that we've got for TransformGov Talks that keep us in free pizza. Anmut, Siva, DXW, Holistic Agility, State of the Future, and TPX Impact, as well as PD. If you'd like to join that virtuous slide of people who are paying for the pizza, if you'd like to help us organise, or if you'd like to speak, you can speak to one of us afterwards or get in touch at transformgovtalks@gmail.com. These are the organisers at the moment. It's just Dave and myself tonight. If you would like to join our merry band, we'd be delighted to have you, so please do let us know. I promised the QR code. This is when I'm going to speak really slowly to give you all the chance to get your mobile phones out. If you'd like to get on Slido, you can take a picture of that QR code now or go to slido.com. Code is 2554962. Oh, there we are. Excellent. Saw some phones going up. And there's another QR code for you as well, which is you can sign up for next month's event already. That will be with Paul Drexler, who's the lead non-exec director of the Department for Business and Trade, and Naya, Nicole, and Ellen from Policy Lab will be talking about co-designing a co-design toolkit. That's happening on Wednesday, the 24th of June at the Ministry of Justice. Of course, that is a bit different from tonight. What day is it not? It's not going to be on a Thursday next time. It's going to be on a Wednesday. And it's not going to be here in Holborn. It's going to be in Westminster. So if you are joining us for that, remember Wednesday and Westminster. Turning to tonight, we've got 2 brilliant speakers for you. First, we'll be hearing from Caitlin Wakeford from LNER. Fancy sketches, how to use AI to prototype quickly, center the user, and not get stuck in magical thinking. She'll be followed by Jagpal Jheeta from the Financial Conduct Authority on how the FCA is adopting AI. So 2 brilliant presentations in prospect for you. I'm going to hand over to Caitlin.
Thank you very much. Hi everyone, my name's Caitlin, as you know. I've currently been at LNER for just 9 weeks, and I'm doing my first public speaking here today, but I have been in the rail industry for a while, and I've recently just transferred over here. But if you do have any questions for me, I've got my manager just over there. If you want to direct anything to him, feel free. Or also Evie, if you've got any delay repay complaints, then go to her. But seriously, I'll take them at the end. So yeah, I'm just going to talk to you guys about AI prototyping, what we've been doing recently here, some really interesting piece of work. I'll just take you through a quick agenda. So we've actually been working with PD a while back for 8 weeks. We were looking at sort of 2 problem areas, but I'm going to talk about reporting, which is the one I worked closer to. I'll take you through our discovery approach, what we sort of did, and what we sort of mean by fancy sketches, what AI prototyping actually unlocks for us, sort of the risks that can come with AI prototyping, why traditional research still matters, and some practical takeaways that I hope you will all find useful and use in your day-to-day jobs. But firstly, I'll take you a quick blur about LNER. So I've written it all down because I really can't remember much about it half the time. But obviously we run trains, I hope you all know that. It's mainly leisure, we do very long distance, and we have like first class as well, whereas some commuters like Northern may not do first class. We run over 160 daily services, and we carry millions of passengers. We also have a very large operational footprint. So we've got over 3,400 employees, and we have over 900 frontline staff working on board trains every single day. And we had approximately 1 billion revenue last year. So the reporting problem that I'm going to take you through. So essentially, we get a lot of reports, and that can be anything from close calls that could be like sexual assault, someone getting thrown onto the tracks, someone getting beaten up, I don't know. And then also to the defects on the train. So if something like a train chair like is non-functional, if the train doors are opening on the wrong side of the tracks, that's not a very good thing, and we need to report that. So recently we have been working with different teams to understand what reporting tools we have in place, what reporting channels we use, and how suppliers are managing those systems as well. And that's led us to see that we have a lot of duplicated reporting, sometimes quadruple or quintuple, like there's a lot of different reports coming in. We see that there is a big lack of visibility in LNER as a whole in terms of reports. So a lot of staff, because they don't see what reports like they've submitted and then don't see that they've actually been worked on, they don't see the action taken, so they lose a lot of trust in doing that. And there's a bit of unclear ownership. The main thing about this sort of piece of work is that the more we looked into it, the larger it just got. We thought it was quite simple, it's just reporting, and it just kept getting bigger and bigger. There's more channels, more people to talk to, more systems. So it became, very, very big. So how we explored this, we did an 8-week collaboration, and this was mainly focused on exploration. We weren't looking to just like come up with a solution straight away. It was very much trying to do a lot of discovery, really understand what like the whole service sort of area, and figure out what we need to do. So we started with operational research. That's like trying to understand the systems, the tools that people are using, how people are actually sending reports in, where they're all going. And it wasn't simple. There's like literally 5 different apps that people are using. They're emailing, they're calling. It's pretty mad. And then we ended up reporting, mapping that reporting journey and the actual triage of all those different apps. Then we did a lot of like in-person speaking to frontline people and back office as well. So that's like the people actually reporting to the people taking the reports in, like how does that go? And seeing them in the real context, seeing how much time it takes to report something, how complicated the reports are, that sort of thing. Then this is the fun part. We got PD in and they did a lot of prototyping, and they essentially were sat with us in some of those like frontline situations, and they literally created like the prototypes there on the spot, like after hearing the feedback from people. And from that, we were able to sort of learn quickly about what people really sort of wanted, like what they found useful, what they didn't, And then we use workshops on top of that to pressure test their assumptions on the prototypes, and then they could like iterate them a bit further. So what matters most is, yeah, we were able to learn quickly before committing to a solution in the end. So what are fancy sketches? This is a word for AI prototypes, because it is just that, it is just a fancy sketch. It's not like an actual solution. It very much helps us turn ideas into a really realistic thing, but not necessarily like a doable thing just yet. They're more beyond like a static wireframe. So you may have a user research workshop and you're sat there with someone showing them a picture of something, and this is something like they can interact with, feel it, like make judgments on. It also allows us, prototypes allows us to look at things in different operational lenses. So not just from like seeing it from the ground below and like sending a report in, we can see it all through like the whole triage, what happens at the back end, that sort of thing. Most importantly, they aren't finished solutions, like I said, they are just thinking tools. And they also help us ask a lot of different questions than we normally would with just traditional user research methods. So what unlocked for us? We were able to move very, very quickly. Like I said, 8 weeks to sort of come up with a potential solution. And so we can move ideas to realistic interactions within hours, iterate on that. Like I said, better conversations. Colleagues are reacting to something that they're seeing and feeling and being like, oh, but usually sometimes they'll be like, oh, what color button is this? Can we change it to that? But yeah, it's not just an abstract idea. And we can also see a lot of visibility in some of the gaps. So there would be a lot of gaps in terms of the operations. So with something like an operational gap, so like there's lots of different systems, how are we going to centralize that and connect it? It can't just be solved by like potentially one solution, one prototype. It allows us to see that much sooner, like what data needs to be fed into that. So there's a lot of magical thinking. This is sort of where we say, like, you know, someone higher up may be asking for a particular solution. They're like, I just want it to do this thing, and the prototype looks like that. And I think they think if it looks real, they think that we can do it, but that's not necessarily the truth. Legacy systems, they're very complex. They're rarely just like lift and shift. Like you really have to do a lot of thinking, and it doesn't solve the organizational fragmentation of the business. But it does very much help hand in hand with traditional research. But I think AI prototyping it shouldn't just be solely replacing traditional research. It should be used hand in hand, because AI prototyping, it can, you know, a higher up person can ask for a particular solution. They can sort of say, I want this thing, and we can show them that, yeah, we could probably build this thing, but is it actually the right thing to do? So being there, like sitting in the control room with people in LNER and understanding how they're actually working, how they're taking the reports in, what sort of pain points they go through, what their day-to-day job is completely different than just slapping a solution, a prototype in front of them and being like, what do you think of this? Like actually understanding their day and job, what they do is really helpful. And also real people behave differently in reality than in just like using one prototype. Like they may find it simple and easy to use like the first time, but like in different contexts, how is that actually going to work? So yeah, it gave us ideas, but research told us where it broke. So key takeaways from this, I think I've done this maybe quite fast, but we should always start with real user needs. I think if there's a key problem, like the reporting that we had in LNER, like we should see it and like go speak to all those people in that journey and really ask them, understand what they need. But then we can use AI to explore, but it shouldn't decide the solution. We should be iterating on it. We can treat the prototypes as questions and not as answers. I think that will come later on down the line. And yeah, I think moving on, like I think a lot of businesses should use AI prototyping just as another tool in their toolbox of user research, in terms of using it with traditional research as well. So yeah, value came from combining rapid prototyping with rigorous discovery. And I will take your questions now, or you can direct them to my manager.
William, thank you very much. That was great, and I'm so jealous that your slides have trains on them.
Oh yeah, I
really
love
wish
the
mine
train
did.
slides.
Lots to dig into. Who would like to ask the first question? Wait for me to come with the tiny microphone. We are on the record, but do tell us who you are and where you're from if you can. And I can see a hand up at the back.
Thanks, Kevin. Hi, I'm Ben. I'm CEO of Public Digital. But a long time ago, I used to design things. So I love the idea of this, and I love that you're calling it fancy sketches. I think it's a really nice term, actually, and sort of demystifies it a bit, because the particular design communities get themselves all tied up with this issue. I think I was just wondering, because I think this is an evolution of sort of wireframing software, like Figma and stuff like that. And I just was wondering, before AI came along, or before this work, did you used to use tools like that? And how is this different and better and worse than that?
Yeah, I personally haven't used Figma. A lot of our UX researchers will do that, but I have created wireframes and such, and been in workshops where we actually draw out a wireframe, get people to put sticky notes on them. I think this is just like evolved, as you said, from that. I think it's a fantastic tool as well, but I don't think it should necessarily replace like wireframing. Having something, I think you can blend the methods. But yeah, it's really interesting seeing with the Figma, it's like having a static wireframe become dynamic. And then with the prototyping, it's like dynamic, but in a 4D sort of method, like you can really see it end to end, like how it should sort of function.
Thank you. Fantastic. Next question. Got one down at the front.
Just so you can get your steps in. But so Jagpal Jheeta, SEA. So I think just to build on Ben's point there, which is time to value and fancy sketches, it's a great term. So you can go faster in terms of producing those, and appreciate you've only been there a few weeks. But how does the rest of the ecosystem also match that cadence and speed? Because as you said, there's almost a perception and an expectation that you can make that live, make it into production sooner as well. Any observations there, or is it too early?
I mean, yeah, fantastic question. Probably a bit too early for me to answer just yet in terms of development. But I think if we were to take the next steps, we can take the prototype, you can build on that sort of code base, and then start getting those requirements in place to then get developers to build it quite fast. So you wouldn't have to go through that sort of MVP stage, like building out the requirements. You've pretty much got a lot of it like already head start if you're already there. So I do think it does fast track it quite a lot.
Excellent. We've got a question online from Anonymous. Good evening to you, Anonymous. If you were to do the work again, is there anything you'd do differently?
Oh, that's an interesting one. I think I would probably start using the prototype sooner. Although I think we did like maybe in the first 2 weeks, but probably like literally creating it from the problem statement that the head of gave us, like building something straight away and then comparing those and seeing like where we get to. I think that would be a good thing to do.
Thank you. Any more questions in the room? We've got one just here.
Kieran, quick question. In terms of team shape, how did using AI change your team shape? Did you need extra people in that knew AI? Or did you reduce the size of your team because you needed less other skills?
I think, again, just sort of started. But I think it can definitely like probably reduce the team size. I think maybe it's worth having like at least 2 people doing the prototyping, not just one, and to get like different variations and different like viewpoints. But I don't think you'd need like an army of like BAs or someone like building these prototypes out. Yeah.
Thanks. We've got time for some more questions in the room. I've got a hand over there. Really, I'm getting my steps in.
Hi, I'm David. I'm one of the organisers. Kind of similar to one of the previous questions, so it might be a bit early to answer. But it'd be really interesting to know whether the same code base for the prototypes gets built out into a real thing, or whether something entirely new gets built. Because what I'm interested in when you're developing something iteratively over time is if your code base for your prototype and your code base for your real thing are different, how do you keep them in sync?
So when you want to show somebody, this is the real thing that I've built, but I want to show you a prototype of something which is slightly different. They've both got to be the same, and I don't know how you sync those two things up.
I honestly, like, from the prototype, I don't think it ever would be the same because it's built by AI, but it's probably not actually going to have a really good like code base, like development. I don't think when I'm seeing it looks a bit janky, if I'm honest, and sometimes not very functional. And so I think it would sort of need to be built from the ground up. But I have seen good in the industry, like some other people building them out and doing them, like they do seem good. So I think it also depends on the tool you're using. But yeah, I would trust more like using from the ground up, like engineers. You could probably have like a skeleton of it, but then build it up.
Great. Any more questions? There we are.
Hi, I'm Matt Garlog. I'm a freelance data scientist. It's really interesting, and I was wondering though, to what extent you are planning to either have or are planning to share it with other parts of the industry. Obviously, there's changes coming down the line with GB railways or whatever it's called, and like how there obviously other operators have got the same problem for sure. I just wondered what you're doing to sort of share this.
Oh yeah, great question. I mean, yeah, this is more like a business strategy one, right? I think like we're always trying to share in the train operating like company industry, like where we have new partners coming in, we want to share as much as we can. I think it's a bit of a tricky landscape at the moment because everyone might have like different practices or ways of working and stuff. So I think it's not something that we're looking to do just yet. But like I think, yeah, we want to share the knowledge at some point. So we're working on getting those conversations to happen.
Change coming down the line, was
Yeah.
that deliberate? I think we've got another question there.
I think it's interesting how research like come along with the AI prototyping. I think now a lot of people are saying with AI, there's very little space for research. But from here, I see maybe actually giving more time and space for testing and researching whether it works. Is this my assumption, or is it really
100%.
have more research in the process?
Yeah, 100%. I think it does like open up a lot. Instead of taking that time, like doing the traditional user research, then being like, okay, we've got the requirements. It's almost like a waterfall method, right? And then you like build out the product. You can really like iterate and then get more feedback on the go. It just really fast tracks it and allows that space to do other things like shadowing colleagues a bit more. Like maybe you wouldn't have much time to do that. But right now, like I can literally sit in the control room for a good day and just sit and watch them deal with like disruptional reports and stuff. So it's really helped me.
Any more questions? Oh, excellent.
Hello, my name is Ursula. I'm from Public Digital. I was curious if you found that kind of showing early ideas as more sketched out prototypes made your stakeholders more attached and more excited about things early on, and that it maybe was harder to discard certain ideas.
Yeah, 100%.
And how you manage that?
Yeah. People get very attached. I think, like I said before, people assume they've seen the prototype, they think we can do it and it's real. We did a playback and everyone was like, oh, like, can you make it do this? Can you make it do that? And it was like, we don't know if this is a final solution just yet. So I think it is like something we're learning to like navigate. And that's why we're actually trying to call it fancy sketches as well, to try and get that onus that it's not actually a real thing just yet. Like we're still fleshing it out. But yeah, one I'm trying to learn to manage a bit better, if I'm honest.
Great. Any more? Gosh, I think you're already, this is the record number of questions we've had. This is great.
Yeah, I feel guilty about that. Sorry, just to continue that thread. Sorry, Andrew Warnock from Clarisis. Were you able to code in any constraints to the prototype for things like technical feasibility or legislation to try and at least get a little bit ahead of some of those less feasible prototypes that it may churn out? Or was the idea to keep it, expansive in that kind of more divergent sort of thinking space?
I think more expansive, but I might actually like lean on you, Alex, if that's all right. Yeah, thank you for that question.
Be the bullets of that one again.
Yeah.
Were you able to put constraints into the
Oh, yeah, kind of. It forgets them quite quickly. So you spend your life kind of going, okay, so here's the constraints. It needs to, so trains lose signal all the time. So you've got people with iPhones desperately trying to make things work. So you say to the thing, cache the data. And he goes, gotcha, boss. And then about 30 prompts later, it's like, no, not caching anything. I'm going to pull every piece of data every 20 seconds. You're like, no, don't do that. AI is beautifully rubbish. It does loads of stuff really well. It's great for prototyping, but as soon as you actually start making it try and do stuff that requires long-term memory, that it requires prioritization of thinking, it all just flops. So fancy sketches, napkin sketches, things that if they get too close to fire, they burn up and disappear. Great. Remembering design constraints? Nope. No, don't do that.
Thanks. And I'm going to have to go all the way back around. I know.
Hi, Alex from DXW. I'm kind of curious as to what happens next. Now we've got a prototype that we have some confidence works. Do we hand it over to the developers? Is this waterfall?
Yeah, it's a waterfall. Yeah, it's great. I think, well, for us in our industry, it's usually a product manager's job to take that, like, see the most value if that prototype is going to solve a solution. Solve a problem. Is it actually going to be a solution? Is it really going to do the thing that it needs to do? So I think from that, like, because we've got the reporting, but then we've got colleague empowerment. Like, there's so many different prototypes that we've looked at, and it depends on how much is that going to cost. Like, what does that actually do for the business? What's the value? So then we need to decide. Yeah, sorry, pretty much. Maybe basically question.
I don't have to move very far for this one.
I should let you get over there, shouldn't I? Hello, it's Rob from Public Digital. When you were talking about managing expectations and persuading people that these were definitely prototypes and not a real thing, did you find that easier or harder with people who are doing the frontline work or the more senior managers?
Great question. I think harder with senior for some reason. Yeah, I think the frontline or not that less senior people, like, they were very, like, open-minded about things. They're really, like, technology agnostic, actually, which I think some of us found maybe surprising because we got so many different roles that, like, some people wouldn't really use their phones and stuff for. And whereas, like, some of the senior people were very much like, we want this now, sort of thing. Whereas they're like, oh, how is this actually going to make my life easier? Whereas senior people see it from a bit of a different lens, don't they? So.
Any final questions? I'll take one more.
I feel like I'm hiding behind some plants because I'm hiding behind some plants. Alex from Softwire. You talked about not having a straight route to production. How kind of scared or excited would you be about using something like this to actually do small scale pilots? So kind of where the consequences of mistake are a bit lower, you know, actually using this for business use.
100%, like, super excited. I think it'd be a great thing to do, and it's like quite it almost feels like a low risk way to do something. You don't have, like, too much, I suppose, like, development time on it. So yeah, I think it'd be really beneficial to the company.
Great. Well, Caitlin, thank you very much indeed. A great start to the evening. Thank you. And I'm going to hand over next to Jagpal.
Thank you.
Is that it? Oh no, you want it? That's fine. Is that okay? Thank you. That's really good. But I think you missed the punchline, which could have been like the Wi-Fi password. Show the thing.
Oh, my bad. Yeah. Well, you can do that now.
Show the thing. No, that's all you. Really good. Thank you. Right. So, how do I lead on from that? So that's really good. It was really good and exciting because that's about a real use case. I'm going to just try and talk slightly broader about what we're doing at the FCA with AI. I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about the overall environment, the regulatory environment, and then a bit about what we're doing internally. But please do interrupt me, put your hand up. If you get bored, tell me to move on as well, right? So there's quite a lot of ground to cover. I'm going to start with an often misquoted Spider-Man quote, which is, with great power comes great responsibility. And this is what AI can do, right? It can drive you wild. And I say this because when I create slides, they're normally like some text,
if I'm being really fancy, I might use our corporate branding color of burgundy or white, and that's about as far as it goes. And I asked my EA to take some of the text I was going to use and put it through Copilot. And after a few iterations, it came out with this. So I apologize. It looks like psychedelic and everything, but this is the danger. And I think someone at the back said, you can be really careful with how you use AI. So if we start at the beginning, and I'll try and put it in context of my role, right? So I'm Jagpal Jheeta. I'm the Chief Product Officer at the FCA, Director of Digital Development. I've been there about 6 and a bit years, but a career in technology. And I have, as a business analyst in my career, used Paint for wireframes. That's how far back I go. But anyway, so what is AI, and what is AI at the FCA, and what are we looking at? What do we worry about, and where do we see the opportunities as well? So first of all, our objectives at the FCA, Financial Conduct Authority, looking after about 40,000 firms, 200,000 individuals who we authorize, supervise, regulate, and we have the power to enforce as well. We have 3 strategic objectives. The first one, protect consumers from harm. There's lots and lots of harm. There's lots of bad actors. There's lots of people wanting to abuse, promise the earth, and take money off everyone in the UK, right? So first job is to protect consumers from harm. Second one, integrity in the markets. So I'm not going to talk about what's happening in the US, but I'm going to say that the UK is seen as somewhere that's high integrity. We absolutely look after and make sure that we're on top of any market manipulation when someone wants to list, and also if there is abuse, that's absolutely now perimeter to go after. And some of the work I'm going to talk about with AI is how do we reduce that time to identify, prosecute, and take out that harm as well. Then the third one is to drive competition in the interest of consumers as well. And again, that's about how do we create the environment where organizations like Revolut, Starling, Monzo all want to come into the UK and ultimately back that growth agenda that the government set out as well. So that's the external lens. So what are the things that we are looking at? What keeps us awake at night, and where do we see the opportunities? So the first one is innovation, right? So we absolutely are key on, we've been working with a sandbox environment over the last 10 years, where we've been inviting firms who want to come into the UK, compete against the large established banks that exist, have a high cost of barrier to entry, and how can you drive innovation to excite and grow your businesses and bring consumers? So we developed some regulation a few years ago called the Consumer Duty, and that's about an outcomes-led, principles-based regulation. That still works in an AI world, because what we're after is how can you use AI to accelerate your outcomes, but you must maintain traceability. You must make sure that you maintain integrity of your consumers or PI data, etc. We are absolutely looking at the risks. So we recognize that data loss, we recognize that having explainability in LLMs, we recognize that there's a huge concentration risk in the US of hyperscalers, and how do we avoid sleepwalking into data potentially not remaining sovereign or not remaining in the UK. We are looking at how do we encourage UK in businesses, but also what does sovereignty really mean in a massively complex, digitally connected supply chain as well. That's a whole talk on its own. We are also then looking at how do we work with suppliers and mega vendors, so critical third parties, the roles of the likes of Microsoft, AWS, everything goes back to AWS eventually, right? Or Microsoft. So how do we play in that, and how do we look at that supply chain? And risks, for example, Mythos from Anthropic, that's being reviewed at the moment. There's a small number of organizations, tiny, 40, that are in Glasswing, and we're working with the Bank of England, with other organizations, regulators across the world as to what could that mean? How do we get ready for it? But also, what can we do to strengthen our defenses? And that's all about making sure that we don't have anarchy on our streets, but also in the global environments as well. So we've got that fine balancing act with others. We're not on our own in trying to balance innovation, because we must adopt AI. We talk very openly about AI is there for opportunity, but also there's the bad guys, that those who want to create harm are also using it at a faster pace. So how do we balance that, and how do we make sure we've got the right guardrails and support structures? One thing that we're really pleased about that we've done for the UK, the FCA, and I spent some time with NVIDIA at the European labs as well, is we've developed a partnership which is seen as global and forward thinking in exposing the NVIDIA libraries to those organizations who want to then use those to drive products and offerings into consumers. So a really good partnership with NVIDIA. We've got over 100 firms that have access to their libraries and tokens to develop ideas that can ultimately serve back into certainly our objectives and make the UK a more attractive proposition. I've talked a bit about fraud. We all know that in the past, whether it's single factor authentication, now double or multi-factor authentication, we all know that using your speech, that can be replicated with about, I think it's like 6 seconds of speech now, you can replicate someone. So where you've got banks that still use, my voice is my password, I don't know, that can absolutely be broken. But then we also know that a lot of the attacks that have taken place in the press last year, certainly with retailers, have been about social engineering. So think about social engineering on top of what essentially everyone becomes a hacker, right? If you know where to look. So how do we protect around that? And what's our role? And what's our role specifically when we are supervising firms that we regulate? Something that we're very, very conscious of is that there is an ecosystem where, whether it's about motor finance or whether it's about some other risks, eventually it all kind of comes back as a web to firms that we regulate. So how do we work through that? We're also then using AI, and I'm going to start talking a bit about internally now. We're using AI to identify patterns a lot faster. So what are we doing internally? Internally, we've spent a lot of time with our SLT. We've got a board, we've got an exco that's a very pro, looking at how can we deliver more with less. There is a perception as to what the FCA has to do. Perception becomes reality, so our perimeter grows, but we've got a fixed amount of headcount and budget. Like most people, we can't go out and raise capital, so how do we do things differently? So we are absolutely investing in our SLT, our managers, our tech spec. So essentially, of 5,500 people, we're taking about 1,000 through a Cambridge Business School-led initiative, which is to upskill, start from the ground up. So what does predictive, generative, agentic mean? How can you use that? We've taken all of our SLT, which is heads of department, directors, and exco, on creating showcase capstone projects to really get comfortable with that terminology, to understand that what is an LLM? Right? It's not magic. How does it work? But then also, what are some of the risks and what are the ethical considerations? What do we need to think about with employees? Why you shouldn't use Copilot to summarize an employee's end-of-year review, for example. Right? So these are some of the things that we're doing internally to upskill a lot of our internal folk. We've rolled out Copilot, as I'm sure many have. We started with a pilot to 200 people, then 1,000, and then 5,500. Everyone's got Copilot now. But then we're embedding it in how we work. So some of our regulatory processes are SLA-driven. We have externally published SLAs that we commit to, that we can't break. We are using AI when we have to go across masses of casework, read through prospectuses to summarize that, to then always have that human in the loop, but really think about how can we do those tasks that are about trawling through masses of data, trawling through masses of different cases, to then summarize, bring that together, and then have that human in the loop really apply their judgment in that process. Some of the examples we've seen, things that used to take 3 hours down to kind of 10 minutes, and these are data points from our frontline teams. They're not from project teams, they're from real users. We've got an internal 150-person help desk where consumers can dial in if it's about anything they're concerned about from the firms that we regulate. Some of our processes there, we're using live transcription to record, which means that the person on the phone can listen as opposed to have to type. We then use summarization. We then capture those case notes, which we can then use also for freedom of information requests as well as retention as well. We are also then working with the likes of Salesforce and AWS to look at accents, to look at actually what's the real thing we should be asking at this point in time. So the time to train a supervisor becomes a lot shorter because you've almost got a ready-made and connected to a knowledge base that's always been updated and learning as well. One of the things that I'm also accountable for at the FCA is how do we bring together AI across the organization? So we've got investment from the FCA to build a brand new product team, and product is what what I'm accountable for at the FCA, which is working with different parts of the organization on use cases. Some of those are going to be short, sharp, build confidence, and then you iterate. Some of them are going to be truly transformational, and they're going to take a long to deliver. But throughout that, we're looking at what are the ethics? How do we make sure that actually the orchestration layer of all of this technology we keep with ourselves, and that if needs be, we can port that to other vendors as well. And then where do we want to invest in our IP? And also in our, as part of our strategic workforce planning, where do we want to invest our very, very precious headcount and people in 2030? What are the tasks they're doing today? Will there be the same activities in 3-4 years' time? Or will there be new activity and tasks? And how are we going to reimagine that? So for example, being in a meeting where you might have someone who translates things into Jira. Well, if you structure the meeting correctly and you have that being captured by Copilot and using tools that can then create your Jira tickets that can then go off to developers around the world, these are all improvements that we're looking to make. So ultimately, there's a huge amount of work externally. We have got a pro AI position, quite rightly, but we've also got a very, very risk-led position. We are looking at things like mythos and what do we do. We recognize that the threats and opportunity, the threats will increase massively, right? Exponential. So whilst in the press, people are talking about mythos, and when that gets released on June the 30th, we already know in their R&D labs, in their skunk works, they will be looking at the next iteration every 3 or 4 months. The models and their capabilities are exponential. We are absolutely making sure that we work across that digital supply chain, but then also investing in our people and capabilities as well. So with that, I'll pause it. I didn't have a train. Yours are so flash. I'll have to have this moving next time. That'll be the next Copilot prompt. But I'll pause there.
Thank you very much, Jagpal. Who would like to ask the first question? I've got 2 hands up already, so I'll come here first.
Hi, I'm Carly from Software. I guess working in the FTA, you've got like both public sector and finance, like compliance all over the place, I imagine. So is there anything that you've learned or like particularly struggled with working in like a particularly like compliance-based environment, and a lot of things to kind of take into account with AI? Because a lot of people talking about that at the moment.
Yeah, so my background prior to the FCA was all commercial. And what I can attest to is we hold our firms to high standards, quite rightly. We hold ourselves to even higher standards. So the time that we take to really look at the traceability, the auditability, do models over time degrade, or do they move away from what we expect them to do? We are absolutely looking at how do we make sure that we can, as part of our records management, not just capture how we got to that decision, which might be a black box through an LLM, through a series of prompts, but then how can we repeat that at a point in time as well? The ethics and the biases that are built in, that again, that's a consideration. But I'd also say this is still a maturing environment. So we're very clear that, so for example, I'm building a brand new function, right? I've got a team that we're recruiting for, and I've been honest in that first 50% of the team, I've got certainty as to what they look like. The second half of it, I want to kind of wait a few months before I go out to the market and think about what they're going to be doing as well. Because how you get value as well is really important. The value you see straight away, like typical projects, there are some things you can touch and feel. The consequential benefit and unintended costs and consequences, I think we still need to think through as well. So I'd say compliance becomes even more important. Records management becomes important. And it's really important to be able to explain how you got to a decision. And again, that goes back to the consumer duty that I started at the beginning with, that we expect of our firms. And finally, I would say commercial firms, those that we regulate, are absolutely running at 100 miles an hour, quite rightly, because of the benefits. There is another conversation about what does it mean to the workforce and the employees of the future, but I just think from holding firms to account, the compliance becomes really important, but then we've got to also know which questions to ask today and which questions to ask in the future as well. And matching that is going to be certainly one of our eyes wide open things that we need to go into as well.
Hi, Alex Blanford, Public Digital. It's a sort of an evolution of one of the questions to Caitlin, because one of the things we noticed in the LNER project was how useful user research was as a grounded, embodied practice within a product team. And you kind of pointed out there that you, like many other parts of the public sector, are being asked politely to do more with less. And AI is both a kind of a tool that allows you to go quicker, but also a tool that problematizes some of the roles in the workforce. I was wondering, with what you've seen so far with FCA, which roles have you seen more value from? Where have you seen sort of have you seen roles that have provided more value than you were expecting, or that have taken on a different kind of shape and significance since you started kind of integrating AI into your workflow in this way?
So a bit about integrating our workflow over the last couple of years has been looking at what are some of the frontline problems that we could solve with AI, and then also within the technology world is looking at how can we reduce that time to value, or to get a version of something out there. So some of the roles, I think, with the frontline teams are about, as an organization, we are very risk aware. And I think we hire people who like to do proven patterns and things, right? Whereas in the commercial environments I've worked at, normally people put their hand up to experiment because you've got to hit the quarter numbers or whatever. So what we're finding is attributes where people want to put their hand up to try things. Actually, those people we want to invest in more. We're finding attributes of people who really want to go across the divide between technology and the business to match the context is so important. So I think attributes about how do you explain, how do you traverse those different silos that you might have traditionally, that becomes really key. I think that, as an aside, my youngest daughter is studying comparative literature, which is all about how do you syntax versus semantics. And I think those sorts of skills can be really important in the future. Internally, I think what we found, so within technology teams, as an example, whether it's about how do you accelerate governance, how do you accelerate design patterns, how do you accelerate code writing, testing, deployment, jury's still out on that. It's really interesting. So some of our partners that we use, partly because of the way the contracts are driven, which are time materials, they are not wanting to go on the bus. So we've got to drag them and think about how do we change our contracts and how do we motivate them differently. So the skills that are coming up there are people thinking commercially. And again, that's not something that the FCA does well. And I'm going to make a bold statement by saying that probably those in government aren't commercially minded by the very nature, whereas in a commercial setting, you probably are. And that's a very, very broad brush I've applied there. But I think, so again, commerciality, context, traverse different teams, I think they're the skills that are going to really come up. And one thing I'm encouraging people to experiment, right? We don't know the answers. We don't know the answers at all. But let's have the open conversation. And those people who want to be bold and think about different ways to do things, use their networks, go out there and understand what the industry is doing. What are the software vendors doing? That's going to be so key.
Thanks. I've got 3 more hands up. I'll go here first.
Thank you, Kevin. Wonderful presentation, Fabian Chessel. I'm kind of interested in, as a regulator, there's a big movement to desludge the UK economy, desludge the UK public service. And I think everyone thought that the way to do that is to try to remove red tape, remove regulations, remove various unnecessary bits of governance or accountability. There's also potentially a world in which we have regulation agents that just do the paperwork that no one's really going to read, other agents that kind of read the paperwork that no one read before and flag any issues. Just kind of curious about your thoughts about where regulation goes in the world of AI.
I'm going to answer that question one-to-one afterwards because it's not on the record. But there is a world, there is a scenario where absolutely you have agents talking to each other. And we've looked at a really high level, right? So we have said if you continue what we're doing, you could have a world where you deploy this. There could be a theoretical world in the future where you deploy an FCA agent that's approved in real time, and it's based on a firm, and it's constantly looking at actually in a real time, is it authorized or is it not, and apply that in real time. I mean, that could be fiction, like science fiction, or it could happen, before we know it. But I think there is the first part of your question about, I think almost the role of regulation certainly changes. And one of the things that what we want to do is, and use the word sludge, I think it's about actually what's the appropriate regulation to drive the government's outcomes, to drive growth, etc. Things like processes that might take 30 days. If you're a firm has a global footprint, and in the UK it takes X amount of time, and in other jurisdictions it takes a fraction of that, 10, 20, 30%. Well, our job is to make that attractive. How can we reduce that? And we invest. One thing I would say is that there's lots of, on the positive side, lots of work we've done with NVIDIA, things we're doing with the AI sandbox. They are being, there are active conversations with regulators around the world. Singapore, for example, and some of my team are out there this week talking out there about, we are seen as a role model, which I think we should be absolutely proud of as well. But we need to continue that and invest.
Thanks. So I think all will have seen that it's hard for the public sector to attract the latest AI talent, because they may want to go and work for AI companies or kind of at least the private sector where the latest innovation happens. You spoke a little bit about initiatives to upskill your existing staff, but I was wondering, in terms of the people actually leading this work, how much are we able to rely on in-house people versus working with partners like NVIDIA that you mentioned?
So that's a really good question, because if we went back to 2022, when there was the Great Resignation, I think many organized people had stayed in their roles over COVID, and then once the gates were lifted, they were off finding other roles. Really, really high attrition rates, and I think everybody around the world, including our partners, and we have about 1,000 people working for us offshore. They had 35% attrition, right? Huge. So how do we find and how do we retain people does go back to almost a sourcing strategy for people and what are the skills that we're looking for. We recognize that we will never compete against the Googles and the Microsofts, but then we're a regulator. I don't think we want people who are breaking things and in live and that mindset either. What we are investing in, and I mentioned, some of it is about working with Cambridge and upskilling people. We have a multi-location strategy. So in the last 4 years, we've gone from 0 to 300 in Leeds. We've grown Edinburgh to from 150 to 350 people. So we're looking at how do we bring early careers and how do we have that national footprint to try and attract. I'd also say certainly within the FCA, so within my area, we have the largest training budget, and that's recognized again because we want to continue to invest and upskill as part of our retention as well. So retention takes many factors. Pay is clearly part of it. A big part of it is about the work-life balance. A big part of it is we're looking at hybrid. So there are all of these other factors to look at. It's really easy if we don't, we will become stale and we won't be able to achieve our outcomes and our people will leave. So it's something that's really, really, really important. And I think having spent majority of my career working for FTSE 100 or private equity, I can kind of draw the comparison. And I think there are pros and cons of each. And I think we've got to recognize, there are certain segments of the community we will not be able to attract. There are huge swathes of the UK population that we can attract. And how do we attract, retain, grow, and grow those into be our leaders of the future as well?
Hi, thanks. Matt Gerlog again. I wanted to sort of follow on from what Fabian was saying about the changing nature of regulation, but I was thinking more from a consumer protection sort of side, and that side that you've got. Obviously, you regulate financial firms and individuals working in financial services, but we've seen just in the last week, I think it is, that ChatGPT now has an integration with banking, and we've seen this in the health sector where people are using LLMs to get health advice that is not necessarily safe. And that's not to say you have a specific role to oversee what ChatGPT are doing in that sort of space, but I wondered what that sort of change is making you as an organization think about the future of your role as a regulator in protecting consumers.
Yeah, so as I mentioned at the beginning, there are three important objectives that we look to: protect consumers from harm, integrity of the markets, and driving competition in the interests of consumers at a really high level. The role of regulation to support a huge swathe of the population that still are not digitally native is an important role, regardless of what we do. I think there's an absolute acknowledgement that not just us as a regulator, but I think us as a country, and how much of an impact can we make with organizations that are worth trillions in the environment in the US we have today is difficult, right? But if you want to operate in the UK, you've got to be authorized, you've got to be regulated. So there are some some influences that we can have. I think it's also important, certainly for the FCA, we make a point of having being involved on a global stage, right? So as I said, some of my team are in Singapore this week. They're regularly, we are part of global forums to make that point. And then it's using that collective ability to try and influence that as well. But it's going to constantly change, absolutely. And we've got a view as to where it's going in the short and medium term. But I think none of us have a crystal ball as to where it's going, but we just know that we need to encourage our firms that we regulate to be responsible and work at that pace, as well as upskill and continue to look at redefining ourselves in the future as well.
Any final questions? I'll probably squeeze one more in if anyone has one. Otherwise, Jagpal, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I am now the only thing between you and pizza and drinks. So I will keep the parish notices as short as I can. All of these will be on our website later as well, so don't worry, but you can take your phones out and take a picture if you'd like. Policy Camp. So this is an idea that came out of a pub trip after TransformGov Talks, which is a new unconference for policy practitioners and others. It's happening on the 23rd of July. You can go to policycamp.org.uk and apply for a ticket. National Conversations, that is an initiative with Foundations of the Digital State in Scotland, Transform Wales in Wales, about trying to get politicians more interested in some issues around digital transformation. You can check out their various initiatives, nationalconversations.org. Civic Punks, our friend and co-founder Derek, is currently travelling the world, trying to find people doing interesting things in government. You can keep up to date with him at civicpunks.com. Data Bites, that's an event series that I chair, most recently with my friends here at Public Digital. There's some news coming on that soon. You can find how to sign up to the mailing list on that on the Public Digital website. We're saying that 3 years ago, we actually had the FCA doing a presentation, 8-minute presentation, 8 bits in a byte, hence 8 minutes in a data byte, all about the sandbox that you mentioned in your slide. So wonderful archive for you to check out there as well. Think Data for Government, that's free to everyone in the public sector. That's happening on the 30th of June. You can find that at thinkdigitalpartners.com. National Strategy Project, that was something that we had a presentation on a good few months ago now. Catherine Day, formerly of Cabinet Office, now a big sort of project to see where the UK should go next. And at Kinship Works, which is one of the hats I wear, we're trying to map where the public sector reformers are and what you need to do civic renewal well. So you can find out more about that at Kinship Works and help us out by coming out with lots of ideas. That would be really useful. Event number 18. We'll have Paul talking about government and business, Naya, Nicole and Ellen talking about co-design. That will be on Wednesday, the 24th of June, 2026 at the Ministry of Justice. So what day is it not? What day is it? Great. Where is it not? Where is it? Excellent. Very good. Make sure you come and come to the right place on the right day. Again, if you'd like to help us organise, if you'd like to speak, if you'd like to sponsor, TransformGov Talks at gmail.com or come and speak to Dave or me afterwards. And you can also help us out. Tell someone how much you enjoyed tonight. Maybe one of the insights that you took away, maybe one of the most interesting things you heard. Encourage them to sign up to the mailing list at transformgov.org.uk. That's it from me. Just thank you again to all of our sponsors. A particular thank you to PD for hosting us so brilliantly tonight. A huge thank you to all of you for coming and some brilliant questions. And join me in a final round of applause for our 2 brilliant speakers tonight. Thank you very much indeed. Pizza will appear. That's brilliant. Thanks very much.
Right?
That was great. That was terrific.
Thank you.
Well done.
I missed the show the thing. It's like teed up.
It's a memorable password.
Yeah.